And welcome to the Fireplace podcast. This is episode 19, and for this episode, we're interviewing David and Anne-Marie, who are in our Facebook group and have been to a few events. Before we start, we have to give our usual disclaimer. None of what we're talking about is financial advice. We're not professionals in this. We're just a group of amateurs aiming to help one another. So with that covered, we've got Andy with us, as usual.
Hello.
And welcome to David and Anne-Marie, and welcome to the podcast. And we're going to be asking you a few questions. And to start off, one of the reasons we wanted to get you on the podcast was that you're self-employed and run a couple of businesses. And one of my questions was, and we'll come back to this later, do you think aiming for fire is easier for the self-employed, as they're used to running a business and well versed in finance, or is it harder because they're so busy running the business that they don't have time to concentrate on their personal finances?
I think it's in some ways easier, in some ways harder, different aspects. So there's different skills that we have been able to transfer into our fire journey. Kind of from a planning point of view, when we started thinking about this probably about 2 years ago, we started looking at kind of, I suppose, with a business, you're obviously looking at kind of the balance sheet and what is going in and out and making sure you're not spending on anything that you shouldn't be unnecessarily. So obviously from that point of view, we were able to transfer those skills and apply that to our income and outgoings of what we were doing there. In terms of recording things, we have good systems in place in the business.
And do you use those similar systems in your home, or sort of parallel ones, or?
Yeah. So we took the systems that we use in work and software and adapted how we track our spending, how we track our income, ISAs, SIPs. We
track our interest as well, because that's always been like with the £1,000 a year threshold. I've kind of manually done that, and I think that's where, kind of from a old business point of view, when we started out, I've been self-employed since 2013. David joined me in 2018. And we started off, like, one day David was like looking at how I was managing things. I had plastic wallets and stickers, and I was moving pieces of paper between things. He was kind of like, well, what are you doing? I was like, well, it's getting a bit tricky, we're getting busier and this is getting a bit harder to manage. And David introduced our CRM and things there. So we don't use the CRM at home, obviously, but the software that we use to kind of record all the sort of the work that we do, we kind of can use that as a template for how we track things at home, and that helps us to kind of, I suppose, prepare for our self-assessment each year as well. So it has made things easier from that point of view.
It might be a good time to ask, can you give us a brief outline of what your current businesses are and where they came from and how they've developed?
Yeah, so I used to be an adult physical disability social worker, and I then went to work for a charity for a number of years, and then it was one of those opportunity things where I met somebody and he had the business know-how and I had the sort of technical know-how, and he sort of said, well, how about we do this together? So fast forward like a year, and I'd left my full-time secure job, which was a little bit scary, but you've got to take a leap sometimes. And we set up a company called Health Your Way. So that's a community interest company, not for profit. And we support people who've got complex healthcare needs, who have something called a personal health budget. The NHS website has lots of information about them. And then we set up Cherry Training, which is a training company in our limited company, in 2018-19.
Mm-hmm.
And we deliver training for the same people that we support in Health Your Way, but for a broader group of people. We train carers and personal assistants to be effective in complex clinical care. So that's our kind of, I suppose, I've always worked in health and social care, and David's.
I came on board in 2018, and I was a lettings agent, and I enjoyed that bit, but we the agency had just recently been bought out and it wasn't as fun. And so we had a choice to make. Do I join you? And I initially dropped my hours by half and did half with you. That lasted a month before it's like I can't have one foot in each camp because I'm no use to either side. Before I just said, no, I've got to go. And the rest is history, really. So I was quite used to setting up systems in the letting side as well, because I helped on that. And
it sounds quite brave. I'm guessing that when you left your full-time job, David, Anne-Marie's businesses were already kind of ticking over and relatively mature.
Yeah, it was strong enough to support us, wasn't it? Because Healthy Your Way had been operating since 2013, and then Cherry started in 2019, I think. So there was things. It was strong enough to kind of support both. We weren't on a fortune by any means, but it was enough to kind of go, okay, we've got everything's covered. We can make the jump, and then we can grow things, because we were just in a point where we were stuck, and the systems we had in place wasn't allowing us to grow, because we were just sort of, it's literally me and a colleague, and that was it. And we were like, well, we can't do much more. We're getting asked to do more work, but we can't do it because we haven't got things in place. So by David coming on board and kind of revisiting stuff, and I think it's fresh eyes on things, isn't it? Because you can just be comfortable with doing things, and someone goes, why don't you do this? You go, that's a great idea. And yet you see it every day. So you need
Andy.
Can I roll back? You talked about one of the businesses, Health Your Way, being a community interest company.
Yes.
So I've always tended to be self-employed during my working life, but that was as a sole trader, and the imperative there was, well, you earn what you're worth, and you're just trying to earn it for yourself. So how does that differ with when you've got this more altruistic goal? I mean, you take a salary from the community interest business, do you?
Yeah, so I take my salary from the community interest company. David takes his salary from Cherry Training, even though we're both directors of Cherry and I'm sole director of Health Your Way.
Yeah.
Health Your Way actually started as a limited company, but we found when we needed to apply for grants and sort of we work heavily with NHS and local authorities, that they were, because we weren't providing direct care, they were a bit like, well, why are you a limited company? There's so much stuff.
So it's the environment you were operating in lent itself to that more. Yeah.
So we ended up switching it, but it's still the same vision and values are still, it could be either. It doesn't really matter to us. It does what we need it to do. So yeah, I take a salary from that. Dividends are very few and far between, because it basically pays its way for us, and there's 2 members of staff as well as myself now in Health Your Way. So it basically just pays for itself, but that's enough, because it also generates work towards Cherry, so it's almost like a feeder company as well.
Yeah, and so you've got the two businesses, and you're both working at it. And then at what point did you start to think about early retirement or financial independence?
So we started looking about 2 years ago. We'd seen Rebel Finance School online, and I saw it was about to be taken down. I think it was January 24 or something, and whizzed through it. And I was saying to David, like, he just didn't have time at that point. And I was like, I'm watching this thing. It's really interesting. Some really good points. Like, we need to look at things. And yeah, so I'd kind of just started drip feeding information to David. And then I think it was the following June, I said, let's watch it together. But by that point, I'm not one for just sitting around and waiting and going, oh, well, we'll just see what happens. I'd started collating. We both had little bitty pensions, not very much, but just like 3 or 4 each in different roles we'd had. So I started tracking them down and collating them together. And then I think
You made me sign a lot of documents. I have no idea what I was signing. I assumed they were all good things.
And so far it's turned out all okay. He still owns the other half of our house. But we also decided...
Or so he thinks.
Yeah,
well, and he's still alive, so it can't have been that bad.
But from that initial thinking, it really kind of got us thinking about we weren't tracking our spending. I knew roughly what came in and out, but David very much kind of left all the finances to me, and he just knew that stuff got paid at the end of the month and money came in, and didn't really have a handle on things. So that led us to start tracking things, and we've tracked properly, like everything for the last year, which has been really illuminating. But we also decided, probably quite extreme sort of initial step, but we decided to downsize the house now rather than later. So we moved house in February this year from a 4-bed detached to a 3-bed detached, and yeah, we've been able to fill both ISAs last year, sorry, and yeah, that's obviously given us a big boost to getting us to where we want to be.
Has that banked some cash, or has that just reduced your mortgage, or are you mortgage free now, or where's that left you?
Yeah, so we've done a bit of everything. So we're in a point of our mortgage, we're on a 5-year fix. We've got another year and 18 months to go. So we've been paying down 10% for the last few years. So we paid down our 10% this year in January. We then filled both stocks and shares ISAs, and then we've got some cash that there's some things we need to do to the house to make it work for us. So there is a cash pot there. And some of that is a buffer. We do have an emergency fund as well that we keep separate. So we just deciding how much of that cash we need to keep out. And I think sometimes it's just nice to have a slightly bigger buffer when you don't know quite what's going to happen.
There's always the kind of offset thing where you use the cash you've got from the house to pay for your day-to-day spending, which then lets you put more into the pensions, and you get more that way from the tax benefits on the pensions and things.
We don't really do it that way because it's more tax efficient for us to put the money into the SIP from our company directly. Because
that's what I mean. I mean, you could
yeah.
if you've got £10,000 left over, you could put that in the current account for shopping, and then up the pension payments from the company to the SIP by £10,000.
Yeah, you could do it through that method. I suppose the other thing, to just go back to Andy's question about the mortgage. So we also, in addition to the two day-to-day businesses, we have 2 rental properties. Again, in a limited company, we've held them for nearly 5 years. And again, we kind of looked at for the stress that we have with them and the faff that we have, although they give us a fairly good return. We've decided to sell both of those. So currently, one is currently going through, and the other one is hopefully going through this week as a confirmed sale. And then that will give us another injection of cash that we can again top up things and then decide, right, where and what are we doing with this. So we're trying.
It sounds like you're absolutely motoring with this. This is great.
So one question I had was, with all this going on, how do you decide how much time to spend growing the business or managing the business against kind of time spent on the family and doing sort of family stuff?
We've got a great team in place with both of the businesses. So Anne-Marie says there's 2 members in Healthier Way, and we've got 3 members of staff in Cherry. So combined, we've got there's just under 10 of us altogether. And what we've done is we've systemized the business where we can, to a point where we've got somebody who supports with the marketing, we've got somebody who supports with the quotes and the client liaising. What we're trying to do is create that system whereby we're not having to be in the picture as much. It does mean that we're kind of actively not always thinking, oh, what are we doing marketing this month? How are we measuring all our marketing? I don't think we're at that point with both of the businesses, because we get a lot of organic work where we get feedback from other clients who've found out from other clients.
We have a lot of word of mouth. We don't do a great deal of advertising, and we brought somebody on to help with kind of helping us to develop that. So, for example, Cherry had a complete branding overhaul, a new website, which took us about 2 years to get right. So a lot of things are happening themselves. David is very much his role is very much sort of the technological support of the business and the systems, but because a lot of those are in place now, David is can take a step back and is exploring other things that he wants to do going forward. And that may generate income, may just generate interest and, learning things like that. I'm still quite integral in the business, but I've one of the members of staff in Health Your Way, she is good at the bookkeeping and that side of things. So she is starting to take some more of those things that I do day to day off me. So there's things that we still need to work on to get me more out. But in terms of family, we've got a 4-year-old daughter. She starts school in September. And our plan over the summer is she'll still go to nursery a little bit because she enjoys going and gives her that routine. But we do want to step back and kind of spend that summer with her and do a bit more activity. And the way we've set things up, we've got that freedom to do that already. So we're kind of semi, I suppose, coasting a little bit already.
That's what we were talking, Andy and I were talking about our own businesses and whether you were kind of aiming to sort of be full on the business or whether you aiming to kind of take a slightly back seat and let the business kind of develop itself. And my other question was going to be around how much you outsource in terms of accounting and marketing and IT, but it sounds like you're insourcing most of that and you're empowering your own staff to do a lot of those functions, so you're not dependent on third parties and things.
Yeah, we've got a really good team now. It's taken us a long time to get to the right team, but we do have them at the moment. We have an accountant who is external to us, but apart from the website developer, that's about it. Everybody else is in-house, which I find we've done external, like worked with external people before, which has worked to a point, but we find it so much easier when the team is in-house, and because no one can just come into our business and like say they're an accountant, they've trained to be an accountant, they could pick up a job and just crack on with it. You just can't do that with us because it's quite unique what we do and things interlink.
It's almost kind of the phrase like tribal knowledge. So you'd have to kind of understand what's going on with our sites before you kind of then start to give your.
It takes at least 6 months for somebody just to kind of be like at a basic level and go, okay, yeah, this is what we're doing. Yeah.
I get the impression from my dealings with you both that you are the kings of detail and analysis, because and it's clear that that's come from your approach to running your business. Because to give listeners some context, we went off to Center Parcs and a load of us had a lovely time having a bit of a conference and a week of walking and everything. At the end of that, David was the one that came along and said, right, guys, for anyone that this helps, here's the breakdown of what the spending was and my spend per day on that as an activity of going and expanding my knowledge. And you're absolutely on it with the analysis and you want to see what return am I getting for this effort put in and this time contributed to it.
Absolutely. And I think I don't think I'm going to beat the price per day on any holiday. I mean, we went to Ibiza a few weeks after, and it was shocking to see that we'd spent this week together as a kind of a fire group, and we did some amazing things. And Ibiza was amazing. Not Ibiza.
Spain.
Yes, we went to Spain, and Spain was lovely. But for you, kind of your fire journey, it gave a lot, and
it made us think differently. Is that holiday what we want to keep doing, or do we want to do a slightly different holiday? Like, would we, for example, like we went to many play parks, and would we have had just as much fun in the UK at those different play parks?
Yeah.
Our daughter wouldn't have cared less. I'm not sure I'm ready to go to Butlins just yet, but somewhere in the middle maybe.
Kind of brings me on to my next question, which is quite a big one, which is, what are your kind of goals in all of this with regard to financial independence, early retirement? Do you want to kind of reduce your working hours and reduce stress, which we've talked about? Do you want to go traveling? Do you want to have an easy life? Do you want to spend more time with your daughter? What's kind of...
I think
a bit of all of the above.
A bit of all. Yeah. I think the businesses have swept us up so much in the last few years that we've just been working on the business that we've kind of not been able to kind of put our heads above the parapet and say, oh, what is there out there? But the last couple of years, I think things have got settled down a bit, haven't they? In terms of there's times where we've got some clarity about what we want to do. So one of the aspects that you've Anne-Marie's got quite an interest in, and I'm
tagging along.
I'm tagging along, but with some cautious skepticism, is the world schooling and being able to look at going where we want in the world and still having some kind of education for our daughter that is structured. And to those that aren't aware, world schooling it's just such a wide open category. It's hard to kind of put a description on it.
Well, so sort of nomad parents.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, obviously we've just said we've moved house. At the moment, our daughter, we do have a very good relationship with David's parents, who live nearby, and we see them regularly. We've got 3 cats who obviously are completely dependent on us. We've got other things that we still need to resolve before we even think about travelling. So it would be a few years before we do that. And it's something we're still toying with of, do we like the stability of having the house and things like that, and maybe have periods where we take out for, say, 3 months at a time and go and do something different with her. Obviously, we'd have to deregister from school, and that all sounds a bit of a headache, and it's a bit of a minefield. But it's more, I think one of the things we're not great at looking really far ahead and going, where do we want to be? What do we want to do? I lost both my parents quite young. They were 51 and 67. And it they were both had a sudden heart attack, and it really makes you think of what's important, because you're getting stressed about something that seems big at the time. The next day the rug's been swept from under your feet, and it makes you think very differently. So you mentioned about stress. I do get stressed about things. Obviously, I'm a normal person, but I tend to kind of think I could not be here tomorrow, so what's the point of getting too stressed? Whereas David does carry a lot of anxiety and stress, probably enough for the both of us. And with us selling the properties as well, we're trying to simplify life so that we've just got the 2 day-to-day businesses, and trying to just make life as simple as possible, really.
Yeah, I think we had an interview recently with Chris, Andy, where he had just recently kind of taken his foot off the pedal slightly and gone from sort of full on fire to coast fire. And he had worked out a way with his employer of effectively just getting a lot more holiday and having all the school holidays free, but continue to work maybe 4 days a week for the rest of the time. And that sounds sort of quite similar to, I can see where you might want to be sort of in the near future, with the option of maybe sort of more travel later on.
Yeah,
I think so. I think it's, if we get to the point where we just need to kind of put a guiding hand on the tiller every so often, just to keep things generally going in the right direction.
Well, we were just talking the other day about, if we did travel, we'd obviously, if we were still, the aim is we would never just kind of walk away and leave the team and right, off you go, you can manage things. We both still care about the business. I certainly still enjoy the thrill of it. I suppose it's a bit of an odd word for healthcare, but it's the feeling you get when you still get something approved. It's a nice feeling. So we were saying, we'd have to think, how can we make it work if we're in different time zones, for example?
Yeah.
We just have to have a system with the team. And again, it comes down to systems. So nothing's unachievable. It's just working a plan and doing it in a kind of calm and steady way.
Yeah.
So is this really a coast fire plan that you think you do this in anticipation that you'll earn less if you travel, but you'd still be working whilst you're traveling?
I think because of the businesses and the way that they're run, I don't think we'd earn any less, to be honest, at the moment. We can't see that changing, because our roles aren't really to specifically generate the work and put the work in place. Our roles are in a slightly different we're managing the business now, really, and supporting the staff. So we're there as the guiding hand and advice and support, as and when an issue arises. And I think the team, we want to empower the team, and they take that responsibility for what they do and are very good at supporting each other. So I don't necessarily think if we went travelling that things would financially change much for us.
Oh, that's good. So it's a business that lends itself to being remote and without too much of a hit.
Yeah, I mean,
So
we used to, before we moved house in February, we moved from Cheshire. When was it? December 21. We had Erin in, no, December 22. We had Erin in January 22, and about 6 weeks later David got COVID, and it kind of sat home that we were on our own and we had no family, we had no support. Yes, we've got friends, but there's only limited things that friends can do, so we decided to move up to Middlesbrough in December 2022. So the team, we set up the business in Cheshire. So we already all worked at home because we set up in 2019, and then the team started joining us in 22 just as lockdown hit. And the majority of the clients we were supporting had complex needs, and we were going into their homes, and they were the ones that were shielding. So we had to kind of pivot things online anyway. So the team have been very used to working at home. They now meet up once a week, and then we periodically probably see them about once a quarter, face to face. But we manage things, there's a team up here and there's a team in Cheshire. So we've kind of proven already the business can work wherever as long as we've got laptops.
Yeah. When you mention family, one thing we often ask people, and it's often quite an interesting one, is what do your friends and family think of your plans? Have you got friends who are working as employees who kind of are very jealous or envious, or they think it's a bit daft, or how?
We've tried to sort of tell them what we're doing and shed a bit of light, and they kind of go, oh, yeah, that sounds interesting, but they're not, kind of head in the sand, I suppose. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing. We have one or two friends that are like intrigued and a bit interested, kind of, I suppose, watching on. But most people are kind of just, I think, because from a friendship group, we're really the only ones that have our own business. Everybody else is employees, so they see us as quite different anyway. I mean, one of the team, she always goes, there's always something going on with you guys, like there's never a dull moment. So even the team aren't like, they're not that, they like what they're doing, they like their life and how, their role and their bit that they play in the puzzle as such.
Do you try tacitly or explicitly to kind of suggest to the team they might want to invest in their pensions and that kind of thing, or do you leave it up to them?
It's something that we've questioned ourselves about what we do and what denotes advice and what denotes just a general suggestion that they can look at it however they want.
Yeah, we have Nest set up for the team, and I know it's not a great, I know it's not a great offering for them, but if I was to change providers, obviously everyone would have to move, but it's then how do they pick what fund, and we can't advise them on that. So I feel
that's for a small business, that's quite a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, and I feel like we're in a bit of a rock between a rock and a hard place of that. I'd like to do something differently for them, but don't really know how to guide them on it.
I think I spoke to David about this, and I think there's some light at the end of the tunnel in that there might be in the near or midterm some sort of collective pension schemes like other countries have, where small businesses could join a collective scheme and get the benefits of something a bit better than Nest, basically. But that's kind of probably a little way away.
I mean, you do have the freedom. Those staff can choose to ask you to pay into their SIP each, and that's probably the ideal. But it does require the push from them to say, "Please pay into my SIP." It's hard to prompt that, isn't it?
You can't really push that because that kind of starts getting into advice, and probably a bit as an employer, you need to be very careful of what you say to them.
Yeah,
I think our actions we try to kind of maybe influenced by our actions about how we maybe what choices we make on things. So we see people around us kind of saying, had a second takeaway this week, and in your head you're thinking takeaways are about £40 each now, and that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But that's not to say that we didn't. We've made some. We're not angels when it comes. We're not saints when it comes to this, and we've made some decisions in the past that is, we were thinking the other day when we were walking down near the beach, and we just said if we'd have done some things different, there's a chance that we could have been retired by now. But we
live and learn, don't we?
It's the old question of if only I'd known this 10 years earlier, I could have been retired 10 years earlier, etc., etc. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we try to wear our actions.
I think as well, like with the team very much three members of the team. So two people David used to work with, both used to be his boss in different roles, and now have come to work with us. So we kind of recruited them. And then one of the other girls that works with us, we met her while she was working somewhere else, and we were using their service. And again, kind of recruited her a year later to come and work with us. So it's almost like we're quite good at seeking out good people that we like their ethics and how they work, how they operate, their personalities, etc. Because in a small team, everyone has to gel. If someone's not gelling, it sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's very difficult. So we try to support the staff based on their life circumstances and where they're at the moment.
And that member of staff coined it really well when she first started with us, and she was trying to understand how we worked. She said, "I get it. You're people first, business second," and absolutely, that was kind of what we are. And so the needs of the staff. So everyone's got things going on in their lives, and if they need to dip out and things like that, nothing's on fire. We can manage it. And so we try to keep that culture going.
Yeah, we have a very warm and close relationship with our staff. One of my members of staff rang me this morning saying, "I've got a sick cat on my doorstep. What shall I do?" She knows I've got cats. So I was coaching her how to take a cat to the vet and whatnot. So that just maybe give you an insight of the relationship we have. It's not just purely business and things like that. So
it all sounds very, very healthy. I mean, my last question really is, what are your next steps? And is there any advice that you'd give to other self-employed people to help them get control of their finances and go for fire?
I think next steps wise is obviously we're selling the 2 properties, so we are very much hoping they go through in the next few months, because the mortgage term is due and going on a variable rate, which is just eye-watering. So we'll feel a lot less stressed once they're sorted. In terms of advice, kind of for self-employed, I think if you can start your SIP as soon as possible, because we very much were kind of led down the route of like spending the business to reduce the corp tax. Buy a car or buy the latest phone every year, has everyone got the right screens and things like that. So we've kind of toned that down and increased the contributions, and so we keep evolving and checking that to see how we can keep increasing our contributions. We're not by any means penny pinching. If someone needs something, we'll get it, but it's more kind of, do we need it, or is there another solution, before us just going let's buy. So it's changed. I think
that's the traditional accounting advice, wasn't it, that if you had extra money in your business, it was an opportunity to buy some things and
spend it, not invest.
Spend it. Whereas
the difference here with fire is you've set, if you like, a tactical goal that every pound that the business can spare, your primary goal is feed it into your SIPs.
Yeah.
And that that's all right, shorter term than saying I want to retire and travel, but it's right, what are we doing this year? We're feeding these SIPs with every pound that the business can spare that's not going to be detrimental to elsewhere. Because until you've got that goal, it's easy for it to all disappear in new screens and kit and just expanding the operation.
And the early days of the business, it's almost like when you go on holiday and you've got all this money in your pocket and you're like, it's free money, it's just like it's there. And with the business, and when you needed something, you like put it on the business. It almost felt like free money for the first few years, because you're like, the business is paying for it. But then you realize that you own the business. So it's your money in some way that is not going back to you. So I think personally and business wise, I think it's really important just to put your radars on who's trying to sell to you, who's trying to take some form of money off you, and trying to keep that. So actually, no, that's my money and I want that to work for me.
This is a necessary expense, which obviously translates for both business and at home. And I think that's for us the biggest thing that we do going forward. And advice for anyone is once you start doing that thinking, it's hard to turn it off.
Yeah.
You know, it's we were out walking today, so we were walking, had a child-free night the other night, and we were walking near the beach, and we knew we'd bought a pizza for at home, and we were like, shall we go and get fish and chips? And then, you know, I was kind of saying, well, I'm not actually that hungry, so shall we just have a walk and we'll go home for the pizza? And we were just as happy doing that and sitting in the garden than we would have been going and getting the fish and chips. So it is just we're not depriving ourselves, we're just thinking about it in a different way.
Yeah, that's a really nice story. I think that's a really nice story to end on. I don't have any more questions. Andy, did you have anything else to ask?
But I could go on forever talking about this this nomading and world schooling side of it, because that fascinates me, because I've retired.
It's scary me, well, because there's a lot of people in the nomadic groups, if you find them on Facebook and places, that are just going somewhere in the world and saying, we're coming with a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old, where can I put them in some kind of school? And that scares me, because I whether that is you kind of say it's a Western perspective, you know,
being in
control of and things. I
think that's a great game to go and play. That would be tremendous fun and a nice challenge. I think I'd be concerned. I think you and I are both quite similar, that we have a limited amount of headspace and stress capacity, and you know, worry about anxiety and things. It's all about managing the burden, and that to me seems front and center with this. I've talked about, there are people we know in the fire community that have gone nomading, and they come apart because they don't have that anchor of home, and it leads to interesting psychological issues. Not naming names, but I wonder how do we manage that? Will you keep your home? Will you keep a home in the UK when you travel? Things like that.
Yeah, and again, I think it depends on what type of travel we do, whether we decide to kind of go, right, let's go off for a year. And for me at the moment, I think I want to keep the home because if you think from an inheritance tax point of view, we were listening to John's podcast, but it gives you that reminder that obviously there is the value in our house that allows for an element within the inheritance tax side of things. So from that point of view, it's almost like, I know your house necessarily, it's like an asset that costs you money, but it is an asset still where money is technically held. So for us, I don't necessarily want to just sell that. And I think as well, we're probably more aware of the impact that if something goes wrong from a health point of view, an accident, we obviously work with people who've got very complex health conditions, people who have got things like motor neuron disease, they've been paralysed, for example, and the level of care and support they need. A lot of our clients have funding for that, but some of them where they've got social care funding and having to contribute to that, how expensive care can be. So that's not, I think people just think that, oh, you get old and you might need care or a nursing home. Like, things could happen much earlier in life. So don't necessarily want to give up that security and not have a base for things. It's, you know,
and there's quite a few content creators out there that you follow for their journey, but the financial foundation isn't there with some of them. Some of them not are relying on quite a weak source of income that, you know, if anything happened out there, that would suddenly
there was one lady I follow, and she's, you know, she lives a fantastic lifestyle with her family, but then she said, well, we left here with 5 credit cards and we're down to 2 now, and that's just not me and David at all. We have credit cards each month but pay them off. We use them for their benefits and things, and that just fills us with horror. You know, we try to minimize. I think apart from my student loan and the mortgage, we have no debt, which is a lovely place to you know be. Very fortunate position. We're very aware.
Sounds very, very good place to be. Well, that's been really useful. Thanks very much. I think we'll stop there. Thanks everyone for listening. If you want to help out the podcast, there's a link to buy me a coffee in the episode description. Andy, anything else from you?
Just give us a like, subscribe to the podcast, support us any way you can. Our wiki website is there, thefireplace.info, with all sorts of articles of further reading on these subjects.
Great. Well, thanks very much, everyone, and bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.